Okay, so today's lesson is very similar to the lessons we've been doing. Okay, the steps, you can see the steps on the board or the steps in here. They're exactly the same as, are almost identical to the steps we've been doing the last couple lessons, right? But there is one change. One change. That one change is I put a step in between what used to be 1 and 2. So now it's a new step 2. This step right here is called factor out GCF. So now we're going to use what's called the GCF. Okay? We use that step whenever we can. If we can, you use it. If you can't, you skip it. We haven't needed to use it before, so that's why we haven't used it. But today we're going to need to use it. So, what is a GCF? Greatest common factor. It's the largest thing that can divide evenly into something, into more than one thing. 2 things, 3 things, the biggest thing that can divide evenly, okay, with no remainder, no decimal, okay? So for example, GCF. Let's do some practice GCF. This is not like what, this is kind of practicing step 2, the new step 2, okay? So if I look at A, what would the GCF be for these two guys here? I have an 18M and I have a positive 20M. So what is the biggest number, letter, thing that goes into both evenly? Well, let's say 18. Let's try the numbers first. 18. 18, 2 goes into 18, 3 goes into 18, 6 goes into 18, 9 goes into 18, obviously 18 goes into 18, and then I have 20. 2 goes into 20, 4 goes into 20, 5 goes into 20, 10, 20. So what I'm looking for is the biggest one they share in common. So what was the biggest one that both of these guys share? What is the biggest number that can go into both of them evenly? 2. Yeah, I think it's going to be 2. So we're going to divide both of them by 2. That's what GCF is. GCF is just dividing. So when I do that, I write a 2 out in front, and then I put parentheses. So when I divide 2 into 18, I get 9. M. Plus, and then 2 goes into 20, 10 times. So that's factoring out the GCM. That's not everything we're going to do today, but it is GCF. That's how we deal with the GCF, right? I know I did that right because if I were to do distributive property, I would end up with where I started. It's just kind of reverse distributive property. Okay? So let's look at the second one, B. 15A and negative 30. What's the biggest thing that goes into both? 15, yeah. I think this one's got a big one, a big 15, a big GCF. So we put 15 on the outside. You always put the GCF on the outside. And then we divide. So 15 goes into 15 once, so 1A minus 2, and that's it. Okay. B and C, or sorry, C and D. C and D. So let's do C first. Okay, so GCF, if you have a negative in front, it's always good to divide by not only a number, but a negative. So I'm going to divide by a negative here. Now, besides the negative, what number goes into both? What's the biggest number that goes into both? Let's see, 2, 8. Yeah, I think it's 8. So negative 8 goes in front. Negative 8 divided by negative 8 makes positive 1. Negative 8 goes into negative 32, positive 4 times. We do that, we divide by a negative when I have a negative out in front. Okay, because of the front, the term in front, we like to be positive. So letter D. Let's do the numbers first. What's the biggest number that goes into negative 3 and negative 15? 3. It's got a negative in front, so let's do a -3. But it also has something else in common. What else do they have in common? The W, right? This guy right here's got two W's. W times W. This one only has just one. So they both have one in common. So that means I can divide by W as well. So I put the GCF out in front. -3 divided by -3 makes +1. So when I divide by a W, what happens here is I take away a power. So I take away 1. So this one has two W's. So that takes away 1. So now I'm just left with 1 W. -3 goes into negative, or 15. -3 goes into 15, -5 times. And the W's go away here. Here the W's go away because I'm factoring 1 out. And there's none left here. Okay, so again, how do you know you did it right? Because if I were to do distributive property there and distributive property there, I would end up with this guy there. If that's true, then you did it right. Okay, so that's practicing step 2. That's practicing the new step, how to factor out a GCF. Okay, everything else is the same. Step 1 is the same. Get it equal to 0, get it in standard form. Also, descending order. We're going to need to get it in descending order. Descending order means from highest power to lowest power. Highest power is first, lowest power is second. The lowest power comes last. Okay, step 2 is the new one. Step 3 is the same. ABC, we've done that before. Step 4, we've done that before. Step 5, step 6, we've done those before. So the only one new is step 2. That's the only step. All right, so let's go to the back. Let's look at these guys here. So remember, factor completely just means don't use the last step. We're not going to use the last step, right? It doesn't mean anything different. It just means factor. Sometimes they say factor, sometimes they say factor completely. No difference. Okay? So step 1 says set equal to 0 if you can, and put it in descending order. Well, there is no equal sign, right? There's no equal sign. And it's already in descending order. I have squared, I have x to the first, and then I have no x over here. So it's already in descending order. Okay? GCF now. What is the biggest thing that goes into all 3 of these guys? I think 5. Yeah, 5. I'm going to divide everything by 5. GCF always goes out in front. What's left when I do that? Well, let's see. 5 goes into 5 once, so it's x squared. 5 goes into -10, -2 times. Got an x there. 5 goes into 400, I believe 80 times. Okay. Now we're going to go to ABC. That's the next step, right? Well, what do we do ABC with? We do ABC with now this guy in here. Okay. It's no longer 5x squared minus 10x minus 400. Now it's x squared minus 2x minus 80. That's what I do ABC with. Okay, so I'm going to go to ABC. A is 1, B is -2, C is -80. Multiply A times C, I get -80. Multiply, or B would go down there, -2. So what are the two numbers that multiply to be -80 and add up to be -2? I think it's 10 and 8. One of them has to be negative, though. I think it's -10. Okay, go to the box. In the green now. So the green, the first term is x squared. The last term is -80. I have -10x, and I have 8x. This part I've done before. So you have x times x. I get a negative 10 here and a positive 8 over here. Okay. So I'm going to have x minus 10, x plus 8. I've done that part before. The only difference is I had a GCF at the beginning. The GCF has to be in the front. Always has to be in the front. That's your answer that you're going to put in delta math. It's going to have parentheses x minus 10, parentheses x plus 8, but it also has to have that GCF out in front. So make sure that GCF is there, otherwise they'll mark it wrong because you did factor out GCF. Okay. All right. Let's try example number 2. Example number 2. Factor completely as well. So first step, set it equal to 0 if you can. Well, I can't because there's no equal sign. Descending order. It already is in descending order. It's got x squared, x to the first, no x. Okay. Factor out a GCF. Is there a number that can be divided by all 3 terms? And if there is, what's the biggest? Yeah, it's going to be 3. So we put 3 on the outside. 3 goes into 3 once, so it just leaves x squared. 3 goes into 42 or 14. It goes into 42 14 times. So 14x. 3 goes into 39 13 times. Okay. All right. Now with the green, I'm going to do ABC. A, B, C. 1, 14, 13, all positives. Okay, so the 2 numbers that multiply to be 13 add to be 14. Well, there's only 2 numbers that multiply to be 13. 13 and 1. So it has to be 13 and 1. There's no other option. Okay. So we go to the box. So we got x squared, positive 13, 13x, 1x. X times itself. We got a positive 13 and a positive 1. So I get x plus 13, x plus 1, and then I have to bring in the GCF that I had earlier. Okay, that's what you put in delta math, just like that. Okay. So the ones we've been doing before didn't have GCFs. We didn't need to do that step. Like the ones we did before, watch, I'll show you from last time. This guy, right? The GCF there was 1. Like I couldn't divide everything by 3 or by 2 or by anything like that. They didn't have it. So that's why I never used that step. But today I need to. Okay. All right, let's go to example number 3. So this guy says solve. So we got to use all the steps now. We got to use all the steps for solving. Okay. It's already set equal to 0. Check. That one's done. But it's not in descending order, right? It's not in descending order. This guy here, this term here, needs to be in front. This guy needs to be second. And then the blue guy needs to be last. So they go with their signs. So negative x cubed needs to be in front, positive 11x squared, and minus 11x. That's descending order. Okay, that was step 1. Step 2, factor out a GCF. Well, here we have a couple things. I have a negative in front. If I have a negative in front, I want to divide by a negative. I don't want a negative in front. So how to divide? Because it's really -1. So I'm going to divide everything by -1 because, well, the only thing that goes into all of them is 1. Like there's nothing else besides -2, -3. And then they also have an x in common, right? They all have x's in common. So I can divide by x as well. Okay. So -1 divided by -1 makes a +1. And then I got to take out an x squared. Oops, wait. I forgot to put the GCF in front. The GCF needs to go in front. So that's going to make x squared, 1x squared, because I took away a power and I divided by -1. Okay. -1 goes into +11, -11 times. And then I take away a power, I'm left with x. And then the last guy, -10 or -1 divided by -10 makes +10. Take away x, I don't have any x's left. Okay. Done with step 2. ABC now. ABC with what's left. Okay, so A equals 1, B equals -11, C equals +10. So I get 10 and -11. So I need the two numbers that multiply to be 10, add up to be -11. So you got 5 and 2 or 10 and 1. Well, to be 11, it's got to be 10 and 1. But to add up to a -11, they both got to be negative too. Okay. Okay. So in the green, I have x squared, that goes up here. I also have +10. I have -10x and -1x. So I get x times x, I get a -10 and a -1. So remember, bring this guy in front, so -1x, x minus 10, x minus 1 equals 0, because it equaled 0 before. Remember, those greens are the same. One's just in factored form, and one is in standard form. That's the only difference. Okay? So now, we have to solve it. We're not done yet, because that didn't say just factor, it said solve. Right? So when we solved, we set all of the factored stuff equal to 1. Well, that's what we're going to do now. The only difference is we have an extra factored term. So this guy is going to be set equal to 1, or sorry, to 0. This guy is going to be set equal to 0. And this guy is going to be set equal to 0. That's the other difference today. Now I'm going to have 3 things to set equal to 0. Zero divided by -1 is 0. Add 10 to both sides. X equals +10. X equals +1. So if I were to put my answer in Delta Math, I would need 3 boxes for this guy, not just 2. In the first box, you would put 0. The second box, you would put positive 10. The third box, you would put a 1. Okay, because this guy had 3 different parts to it. Those are the x-intercepts, right? So if I were to graph this guy here at the very beginning, if I were to graph this guy, it would cross the x-axis at 0, 10, and 1. Okay? Those are the roots, right? Remember, those are the roots. Sometimes they'll call them roots. Sometimes they'll call them x-intercepts. Sometimes they'll call them solutions. They got a lot of different names. Zeros, right? Okay, let's look at this guy here. Let's do number 4. We're going to do a couple more practice problems and then we'll be done. Okay. Okay, solve. Again, solve. So first step, set it equal to 0. Done. Second step, descending order. Descending order. So just like I did last time, this time the purple is going to go first. So it's negative 3x squared, or sorry, cubed to the third power, plus 6x squared, plus 45x. Okay, that's in descending order. I got the biggest power, second biggest power, last power. Okay, step 2, factor out a GCF. So what is the biggest number? Let's do numbers first. What is the biggest number that can go into all of these guys? Yeah, it's going to be 3, and then we want to do a negative. Good. We want to do a negative because the leading guy is negative. So we not only want to do a 3, we want to divide by a negative 3. But that's not all they have in common, right? They also have x in common. The first guy has 3 of them. This guy has 2, this guy has 1. So they all have at least 1 in common. All right, so I'm going to put the negative 3x in front. Negative 3 divided by negative 3 is positive 1, and I have 2 powers of x left. Negative 3 goes into 6, negative 2 times. I have 1 power left of x. Negative 3 goes into 45, negative 15 times. It doesn't have any x's left because I took 1 away. Okay, that was step 2, GCF. Step 3, now we go back to ABC. I'm going to do ABC for the green, for the part in the green. Negative 2, negative 15. So I get negative 15 and positive, sorry, negative 2. So the two numbers that multiply to be negative 15 and add to be negative 2. I believe it's going to be 5 and 3, but one of them has to be negative, negative 5. Okay. X squared minus 15, I get a negative 5x and a positive 3x. Let's see, so x and x, I get a minus 5 and a positive 3. Okay, so I have x minus 5 and x plus 3. But then I also have the GCF, which I had at the beginning, which I need to include. So now I have three factored terms. Negative 3x, x minus 5, x plus 3. They all need to be set equal to 0 to solve. So negative 3x equals 0. X minus 5 equals 0. X plus 3 equals 0. Okay. So the first one, I'm going to divide by negative 3 since it's negative 3 times x. The opposite would be division. So I get 1x equals 0. The next one, I'm going to add 5 to both sides. The last one, I subtract 3. So I get negative 3. So again, you'd have 3 boxes. 0, 5, negative 3. Separate boxes. These guys over here, though, the ones we did for 1 and 2, 1 box. 3 out in front, x plus 13, x plus 1. Okay? Because if you try to do 3 different boxes here for this factor guy, it'll mark it wrong. Because there's technically one answer. They're all together. Here, there are 3 different answers. Okay? All right, so I'm going to give you 2 more problems to do in your notes. So whatever page you're going to tape this in, let's do 2 more problems, and then we'll be done. Okay. First one, example 5. So the first directions are to factor completely. Okay. I'll give you some time to do that one. All right. So let's see. Step 1, it's a trinomial. So step 1, set equal to 0. There is no equal sign. Okay. But we can put it in descending order. Luckily, they already gave it to us in descending order. N to the first power, no n. All right, so step 2, factor out of GCF. All right, so let's factor out of GCF. So I can divide all of them. I believe 5 is the biggest thing I can divide them all by. Not n, because 35 doesn't have an n, so I can't divide by that. Okay, so I've got 5 out in front. 4n squared minus 12n minus 7. Okay. So now next step, ABC. ABC with what's on the inside. So this guy right here. A is 4, B is negative 12, C is negative 7. So I get 4 times, A times C, 4 times negative 7 is negative 28. B is negative 12. So the 2 numbers that multiply to be negative 28, but add up to be negative 12, 14 and 2, but negative 14. Okay. So then we have the box. So in the green, 4n squared goes up here, negative 7 goes there, and then minus 14n and positive 2n. Okay. So I have an n times an n there. But I have to make a 4, just like we did yesterday. So it could be 2 times 2 or 4 times 1. Well, if I put a 4 here, that goes in there once, but it doesn't go into negative 14 evenly. So that's not going to work. If I put a 4 here, it goes in here once, but it doesn't go in there evenly. 4 doesn't fit into 2. It's too big. So that means the only other option is 2 and 2. So 2 times negative 7 make negative 14, and 2 times positive 1 makes positive 2. Okay, so now I have 2n minus 7, 2n plus 1. But I can't forget about my GCF. The directions just said factor. They didn't say solve. If they said solve, I would split them up, set them equal to 0, and do what I've been doing before, but they don't say solve. That's all. Okay. All right, one more, we'll be done. One more, and then we are done. So this one's going to, the last one's going to be a solve. Last one's going to be a solve. Okay. So this will be example number 6. So solve by factoring. Okay. All right, so here we go. 3x squared, or cubed, sorry, 3x cubed minus 30x squared plus 63x equals 0. All right, here we go. Last one. All right, so divide by, let's see, GCF would be 3x. Let's see, 3x. That would be x squared minus 10x plus 21. Okay, equals 0. So this guy here, all right, so we got a equals 1, b equals negative 10, c equals 21. Let's move this up a little bit. So what do we got? 21, negative 10, what is that? 7 and 3? Negative 7, negative 3. X squared, 21 minus 7x minus 3x. We got x minus 7 minus 3. Okay. So when we put them together, give me 1 second. Okay. So we got 3x, then we got x minus 7, x minus 3 equals 0. If it said factor, we'd be done, but it said solve, so we got to go 3x equals 0, x minus 7 equals 0, x minus 3 equals 0. So let's see here, divide by 3, it's 0, add 7, add 7, 7, positive, add 3, I get 3. 3 boxes, 0, 7, 3. Okay. Okay, so now you can staple, or not staple, tape. There should be tape